Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to begin today with Here We Have Gathered. Please rise as you are able.
You may be seated. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Portland. Ours is a multi-generational community where each one of us is invited to grow on our spiritual path, and collectively we are invited to grow our capacity to build the beloved community. Welcome to all of you who are gathered physically in our sanctuary, and to those who are joining us via the live stream right now, and hello to those that might be joining later this week. A special welcome to folks who are visitors, whether you're here for the first time or one of the first times, and whether you're here in person or online. And always a special shout out to the longtime attenders of our congregation. Maybe this is your 1000th visit. Welcome to you as well. We are so glad you're here. I have a couple of important announcements. First, we are delighted to welcome our new intern, Danielle Garrett. Yay! Danielle is assisting today. She will be preaching next week, and you'll be learning much more about her, but I want to share that she has moved here from Nashville, where she attended Vanderbilt Divinity School, and before that, she spent a decade working in healthcare policy and advocacy in DC. We all look forward to getting to know Danielle and to learning with her and from her throughout this year. So welcome, welcome, Danielle. As many of you remember, our longtime beloved pianist Signe Lusk retired recently, and we are in search for a new part-time pianist to accompany our choirs and our services on Sunday morning, alternating and alongside at times with our incredible organist, Joe O'Donnell. Yes. So please spread the word, and if you know someone who is interested, tell them to send in a resume and a cover letter this week, ideally by Thursday. Third, I just want to give you a heads up for things to look forward to next month. Mark your calendar for our Intergenerational Homecoming Sunday on September 10th, where we will be debuting our new pancake griddle. The men's group is going to make pancakes for as many people as want them. The first day of our children and youth RE classes start the following week on September 17th, and there will be 2 evening services at the beginning and the ending of the Jewish high holidays, an evening service honoring the themes of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, on Friday, September 15th, and on the evening of Yom Kippur on Sunday evening, September 24th. People really requested that Yom Kippur service to come back, and as someone that's come from 2 congregations that celebrate the 2 holidays together, it creates a wonderful 10-day practice. And one is a little bit of feasting with the New Year, and of course Yom Kippur is more of a fast. Following the service, you are invited to join fellow congregants in the social hour right below the sanctuary in Fuller Hall. Check out the art wall, and as well the first share table where congregants are invited to share the bounty from their gardens in this season. Let us turn to our neighbors online and in person and greet one another. Danielle will be lighting our chalice this morning, and if you're joining us from home, we invite you to light a chalice or a candle with us. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love. Our call to worship is by Beverly and David Bumbaugh. Our church exists to proclaim the gospel that each human being is infinitely precious, that the meaning of our lives lies hidden in our interactions with each other. We wish to be a church where we encounter each other with wonder, appreciation, and expectation, where we call out of each other strengths, wisdom, and compassion that we never knew we had. Will you rise in body or spirit and join in singing "Bring Many Names"? Our responsive reading is "We Bid You Welcome" by Richard Gilbert. We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this hall as a homecoming, who have found here room for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. And now let us join in our doxology.
Good morning, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you all this year. This morning, we are sharing our plate with the First Unitarian Portland Shower Project. The church has been exploring what service our downtown building might offer for the care of our neighborhood, and through dedicated volunteers and staff, we are proud to say this project is well underway. In consultation with service providers, neighbors living outdoors, as well as many of you, we are moving closer to shaping a volunteer program to offer showers and resting stations in our church's lower level. I just saw the space this week on a tour around the building with Reverend Allison and was so encouraged to learn that the community is exploring ways to practice hospitality and put that space to good use. Yes. If you would like to give electronically, there will be a slide in a minute with a QR code showing you how you can do that. And if you are in person this morning, an usher will be by shortly for your donation. We are so grateful for your generosity that supports the work of this congregation. During our service each week, we take time to hold the prayer intentions of our community. If you're here in person, each week you can light a candle of intention in one of our galleries, or if you are online, you can send them to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. If you have a concern that you would like mentioned in a service or in our weekly e-news, you can email that to parishconcern@firstunitarianportland.org. We all come to this space with joys and concerns on our hearts. There are a few to share with you all from the pulpit today. Member Karen Kovich died peacefully on August 12th at the age of 78 after living with vascular dementia for the last couple of years of her life. Karen's husband Dave called her the organizer in her family and with groups she was with, loving the role of bringing people together. She was a cellist and shared her gifts in our music program as a choir member, as a cellist in special ensembles, and as one of the singing chefs that nurtured community among choir members. She was also involved in our adult learning program and the Alliance. Besides Dave, Karen leaves a son and 3 stepsons and their families. A memorial is planned for sometime this fall. We hold Dave and his family at this time. We also continue to hold in our hearts all of those impacted by the devastating fires in Hawaii, those grieving unimaginable losses and doing the work of rebuilding their homes and communities. We are exploring ways that we can tangibly show our support as a faith community, but in the meantime, we hold them in love and pray that we might commit ourselves to climate justice and taking actions that will heal and protect this beautiful, fragile planet and all of those who inhabit it. Will you pray with me? Spirit of life, God we know by many names, we come to this sacred space today, carrying both burdens and joys. We come grieving losses and celebrating new possibilities. And with each care we hold in our hearts this morning, we also bring our questions. Why? Why me? Why them? Why now? When? When will this good thing happen? When will this difficult thing end? When is the right time to take this risk? What's next? What should I do? What does this all mean? How will I get through this? How did I get so lucky? How do I live faithfully? Sometimes the questions feel too numerous to hold, too impossible to answer. Help us to know that we do not have to hold them alone. As a faith community, we gather to hold these hard questions together and to remember that there is a great love in the universe holding them with us. Spirit of life, help us, in the words of the poet Rilke, learn to love the questions. May these questions lead us into deeper relationship, deeper faith, and deeper love. Even when they aren't answered, in the asking of them, may we be met with grace, led to greater empathy, or moved to prophetic action. May we know that all of the questions we bring with us this morning, however big or small, whether spoken aloud or held quietly in our hearts, those questions are welcome here. Let us lay them down at this altar and lighten our loads, so that our souls and minds might rest for a spell and find peace. May it be so, and amen. Now let us share in a few moments of silent reflection. Amen. Please remain seated as we sing together, Have I Not Known? Our reading today is an excerpt from Warren Berger's book, A More Beautiful Question. Questions are sometimes seen as spades that help to unearth buried truths, are flashlights that, in the words of Dan Rothstein of the Right Question Institute, shine a light on where you need to go. The late Frances Peavey, a quirky, colorful social activist whose work revolved around what she called strategic questioning, aimed at bridging cultural differences between people, once observed that a good question is like a lever used to pry open the stuck lid of a paint can. Maybe we talk about what a question is like because it's hard to wrap our minds around what it actually is. Many tend to think of it as a form of speech, but that would mean if you didn't utter a question, it wouldn't exist, and that's not the case. A question can reside in the mind for a long time, maybe forever, without being spoken to anyone. We do know that the ability to question, whether verbally or through other means, is one of the things that separates us from other primates. Paul Harris, an education professor at Harvard University, who has studied questioning in children, sees this as an important evolutionary divide, that from an early age, even before speech, humans will use some form of questioning to try to gain information. A child may pick up a kiwi fruit and indicate through a look or gesture directed at a nearby adult a desire to know more. Chimpanzees don't do this. They may ask for a treat through signaling, but it's a simple request for food as opposed to an information-seeking question. So then, one of the primary drivers of questioning is an awareness of what we don't know. Good questioners tend to be aware of and quite comfortable with their own ignorance. But they constantly probe that vast ignorance using the question flashlight, or, if you prefer, they attack it with the question spade.
When the waves roll on over the water and the ocean cries, we look to our sons and daughters to explain our lives, as if a child could tell us why.
Sure as the sunrise, sure as the sea, sure as the wind in the trees, we rise again in the faces of our children. We rise again in the voices of our song. We rise again in the waves out on the ocean. And then we rise again.
When the lights go dark with the forces of creation across a stormy sky, we look to reincarnation to explain our lives, as if a child could tell us why.
Sure as the sunshine, sure as the sea, sure as the wind in the trees, we rise again in the faces of our children. We rise again in the voices of our song. We rise again in the waves out on the ocean. And then
Thank you, Mark, Joe, Rich, and all. That was beautiful. I'll tell you, our summer pickup choir is a wonderful opportunity. So I want to thank the volunteers that went through these questions and sent them to me, and I'm going to ask them in exactly the order that I received them from those volunteers. But I want to share two things with you, that many of these questions could be sermons, and all of these questions will be fodder for sharing with you throughout the year. So everything that's here will come up. But I've brought with me something I usually just carry, my cell phone, but a little clock, so that I remember that I need to not go a sermon length for any of these questions, because I think there's a value to beginning a conversation, if you will, on a number of them, and then we'll continue that conversation. So this is, so I don't forget. And I just received them this morning and had time to scan them. So, so here we go. We want to know what the UU can do to attract and keep young families. First question. So one of the things that I've learned, as a parent, but also as a minister before I was a parent, is that we often will get a visit from families at different times, but one of those times is when one of their children or a child turns about 6 years old. When they reach that age, they may have had their first experience of loss or become aware that people die and of their own mortality. And so often, one of the first questions that brings a family is when a child says, "What happens to you, my parent, after you die? What happens to me after I die? What happens to my pet after I die? Or what happens to a beloved friend after they die?" And that is so often when a parent will come into my office and reach out for some support from the village. And I think that connects with the larger answer, is that parents and families are often looking for a village with which to help raise their children around the big questions. And in fact, I think that this is one of the reasons that we might come at any age, is because we are wondering about some of the big questions about what it means to lead a life that is filled with purpose, and what it would mean at the end of our days. So those are among the big questions that bring people. Another thing I want to mention in terms of attracting and keeping young families is that before people become a parent, they may connect with someone that they love, maybe someone that they call a life partner or a significant other, and they may meet someone that doesn't have the same religious understandings. And that's another time where we will often receive people, because they don't necessarily have a goal that they and their partner should have the same beliefs, and they may want a place where they can be together and welcome. And so that's one of the ways our religious pluralism attracts families and many people. And then I think in terms of attracting and keeping young families, I'm going to go even earlier, which is when young adults walk through our doors, what are the ways that we reflect what is normative in their lives and represent them, as well as people of all ages. We want to represent the whole lifespan. And I'm reminded that I have led and helped coach people around campus ministries for about a decade. And when I started a young adult campus ministry at NYU and a couple of other places in New York, the college students came to our historic sanctuary of All Souls in New York City, and they loved the music. And we had in our choir Renee Fleming, by the way. So they loved it, but they didn't always feel reflected in the music, and they said they wanted to be in a place where the music, and I think we're doing that, stretching across the lifespan, but they wanted to see something like a band, that they would go out and see a band. And so, of course, young adults are just as diverse as people of any age, so not everyone wants the same thing, but how do we reflect the multi-generational diversity that we hope to have participate in our congregation? And I'll mention this, we spoke with some families during the community conversations, and there was a desire for adult religious education, not just for their children, for opportunities they felt they had disconnected over the pandemic, and I heard some stories about retreats that were very meaningful, where people connected with other families, and wanting more opportunities for families to socialize together outside of our RE classes. And finally, I'll mention here communications, which is parents are all kinds of ages, but there's sort of a frame between infants and, let's say, people who are graduating high school. There certainly will be teenagers, there certainly will be people in their 60s and older, but they tend to hover in their 20s and 50s, and they use many different social media platforms. And so again, what's normative? And that's one reason that we have hired and expanded our communications position to be a full-time communications coordinator, so we can actually be communicating with young families so they can find us in the platforms where they will be engaging. And of course, it's not just one across that age range. So, that was probably too long for one question. The next one will be easier. Number 2, how do we define God? God is that 3-letter word that we use to point towards what is of ultimate importance and ultimate worth. And Unitarian Universalists, of course, have a huge spectrum of how we define God. Some resonate more with an understanding of God as immanent, the God within, that still small voice that we encounter in the scriptures sometimes when a prophet is in a cave or is greeted by that whisper in the middle of sleep, on a meditation retreat in a beautiful spot, that still small voice within. And sometimes we talk about understandings of God that are more transcendent, more outside of us, and we connect to that beyond, that beckons us towards love. In a religious education class that I taught, I saw one of the best examples of the Unitarian approach to understanding God. It was an activity where all the children were invited to draw their understanding of who God is, totally uninhibited, without any direction from the teacher. And there were so many different examples and question marks and blanks on the page, and children dividing the page into quadrants where they were imagining different understandings of God and then sharing with each other all the different concepts of God. And I thought to myself, now there, in this collective mosaic of sharing, that is the Unitarian Universalist God. And I'll just share that one of the ways that I understand God is as the creative power of love that is able to enter into the suffering and brokenness in our lives and in the world, and to move with us towards healing. I resonate with a more process theology understanding of God as a verb. And many Unitarian Universalists might also talk about God as that which is present in all and yet greater than each. And again, my guess is if we had a chance, which by the way, I would love to do that activity, this many people drawing pictures of God and sharing all their question marks and blanks and understandings, that would be an even better picture of the Unitarian Universalist concept of God. 3, what did our ancestors do right? This is a great question, and like the others, definitely worthy of a sermon. When I think about our Unitarian and Universalist congregations and our Unitarian Universalist congregations and the sweeping arc of history, in some ways, one of the reasons that we have existed is to institutionalize religious freedom. And specifically, freedom tempered by love. Not just the freedom to do whatever I want, but rather a concept of a collective freedom. Today we would talk about the call of collective liberation. And so what I would say is that I don't know if our ancestors always did everything right. We believe the revelation is not sealed, but they moved in the right direction whenever it is that they were serving that spirit of freedom bounded by love. So I think about William Ellery Channing, who is often credited as coining, if you will, Unitarian as a label here in the United States, and the courage that it took. He was accused of being a Unitarian. He was accused of being a heretic. And one day at the Baltimore sermon in 1819, at the ordination of Jared Sparks, he actually said, "Yes, I am a Unitarian. It is true. I claim that not only do we follow Jesus, but we have the ability to be like Jesus. We can live into our goodness. And he's not just a mediator for us. He helps point the way for what is asked of all of us." And we have to remember that people were burned at the stake for saying things like that because the Orthodox Church had such a hellfire and brimstone negative attitude about human beings. So I could utter Michael Servetus, I could utter Ballou, all the names of people that had the courage to imagine a God that was more loving and a feeling about humanity's ability to grow wiser and more loving over time, and to recognize that that's the initiating spirit of religious freedom for us. And then I would name some other things like our ancestors, when they had the courage to ordain in advance of many other traditions, women, people who identified as gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, all across the sexual orientation and gender identity spectrum, the first African American to be ordained in our movement. But we have to remember, moving in the right direction sometimes means detours. Sometimes we would move in a direction but make it an exception. Oh, that woman is okay, or that black man, but then not resource them to really thrive. And ministers are called out among the laity. So we're just a reflection of who are the leaders in our movement. And so we want, again, to reflect the diversity of humanity. So those are times, or this church, I'll mention, we're talking so much, importantly, about reproductive justice. When we had the courage to preach about reproductive rights and access in the 70s, and freedom tempered by love, was we weren't just looking to have the right exist, but here we preached the need to have Medicaid support access to abortions. Freedom tempered by love means that that freedom can be enjoyed by all people regardless of economic situation, class, religious orientation, et cetera, et cetera. And I could go on, but I think I'll stop there for now. And when we show up anytime religious freedom is threatened in the world. This one's easy. What is prayer? And for example, when do we pray for those suffering in Ukraine? Prayer, again, is many things to different Unitarian Universalists, but I'll start this because I'm thinking about Divinity School with Danielle here. I went to Harvard Divinity School in the Boston area, and there was a joke that you went to Harvard to learn the theory of prayer. You went to Andover Newton to teach other people how to pray, and you went to Episcopal Divinity School to learn how to pray. And I thought, I better go to Episcopal Divinity School if I'm going to have any integrity. And in that class, we had to pray 3.5 hours a week. And of course, I knew this from my formation as a Unitarian Universalist, but we had the chance to practice written prayers, extemporaneous prayers, lectio divina, where you read scriptures or poetry and pray on it, walking prayers like the labyrinth, silent prayers. There are so many forms of prayer. There are embodied prayers, there are physical prayers like the prayer flags. There are as many different forms of prayers as you can imagine. And sometimes when people lift up prayer in a Unitarian Universalist context, we will pray for other people, and we believe that prayer makes a difference, but there's something called intercessory prayer, where you're asking God to intervene on behalf of that person. We don't tend to believe that God is choosing this child on the pediatric cancer ward to be saved and not choosing this child on the pediatric cancer ward to be saved. So we don't pray so much for a change in the mind of God, if you will, as we pray to initiate a change in our hearts and minds. And when we pray about justice here in our city, something within us is reorienting, so when we go out into the world and when we interact with one another here, we are changed in our interactions. And there's so much more to say about prayer, but those are some things that come to mind. And for us, not everyone is praying and interacting with God. In fact, I will say I want to jump to a question that's connected about atheism. What is the place in the UU faith for an atheist or a non-believer? Atheists belong here, and this is also their church. So when we talk about worship or prayer, often we'll use words like spirit of life to be more inclusive, because we are not. Some people aren't defining God. I thought that was a great question. How do we define God? But what is of ultimate worth may not be defined best by the use of that 3-letter word God for some people. So humanists are doing reflection here. I heard at the ICUU, the International Council of Unitarian Universalists Symposium, that maybe we shouldn't talk about Unitarian Universalist theology, but rather phideology. What is it that we are loyal to? What is it that we have faith in? What is it that the question of what is God is a question of what guides our life, and what guides our life may or may not include God. So there's much more I could say. And then, what time is it? Oh, I still have a little time. So this is a very important one. As a Catholic, I was taught not to trust my body and that it was not pure. What is first use belief around the body? Sometimes when we arrive in a Unitarian Universalist congregation, we may have to do some unlearning about things that were attached to religion in other spaces. And one of the ones that has been the most damaging has been the teachings in some places about our bodies. Here we emphasize that all of our bodies are sacred. All sizes of bodies, all colors of bodies, all genders, what we do with our bodies, our sexualities are sacred. Everything we do is a miracle. Emerson talked about how he believed in miracles because he could raise his arm. Our bodies are sacred, including bodies of different abilities. I can't fully open my arm because I've had 8,000 rads of radiation. So sometimes we have physical limitations. Our bodies are sacred, all of them here. And I want to lift up the precious learning in our whole lives classes. Again, freedom tempered by love. And the way that that works in our AL class is that we teach our children and adults. AL goes through all ages, including there's a class for the first graders in AL and for elders in AL. I mean, it goes across the lifespan. Is it safe? Is it consensual? Freedom tempered by love. So this is a place where we learn how together to proclaim that everybody is sacred. And especially in these times, affirm our bodily autonomy, our ability to make decisions over our bodies, healthcare and otherwise. The next question, how is our attendance and how can we attract others? I don't have the exact attendance numbers this morning, but I can bring them to you. But what I can reflect is we do take attendance every week. And so I can share with you what I've seen in the last year. And for those who are looking for a math equation, we can divide that and give you the answer soon, maybe in one of my quarterly updates this year. But when I was visiting the congregation as a pre-candidate and then a candidate, people were asking the question, would we ever have more than 150 people in our building on a Sunday morning? And I'm pleased to share with you that the largest attendance we had was 486, and that we often had double that between children, youth, and adults. And even in the summer, we've often had just that. Not to speak of all of the people online at the same time. We've often had that number of screens online, 150 or more, and it builds throughout the week. But we actually just count who's here during the hour we're here, and I think in the year ahead we may also want to pay attention to who comes on a Wednesday, and I'll lift that up because Sunday morning may not work for everyone. So a question about how we can attract folks is not always about who can attend literally between 10:30 and 11:45. It may be that we want to look at other times during the week that we can connect with people and look at more of a full week faith perspective and how to count people. If someone shows up for a social justice event and that's the thing they can make that week, let me just say it here clearly, that counts. Worship counts, justice counts, religious education counts, our community building counts. You know, we have to learn how to really offer a breadth of programming and think about whether or not Sunday morning at one time is the only time. But it is the largest gathering, and there's a power to that and that experience. The membership engagement coordinator, we have heard a lot from newcomers how challenging it is to make connections in this community when you first come. So we are putting into place a number of things to help people build community this year, including covenant circles are going to be launched. If you'd like to be a covenant circle facilitator, come talk to me. And we are also, what I mentioned before, how are people finding us? People, here we live in what claims to be the least religious state of the Union. And so people don't always know that this is what they're looking for. They say they want a place where they can find community, where they can make a difference, and where they can make meaning. And they don't know they're looking for a place like this. So we have to think about, they're going to find us outside, online, or at Pioneer Square or other places. So thinking about how we can connect with people. The word for that room out there is called the narthex. We always have interesting words that some people know and some people don't know in congregations. You might call it the lobby. So the new narthex, or the new lobby, is not there, it's outside. So how do we do more of that? So, and let me then at least go to, I think I have time for one more, the elevator speech. How many of you have an elevator speech? If you have one, raise your hand. Oh, good. I want to hear all those elevator speeches. We should, maybe this year's a year to do a workshop about articulating our faith. That is actually a fun workshop. So my elevator speech changes. The honest answer is that when I'm in an elevator with somebody, luckily I'm from New York City, so I imagine myself on the 40th floor. So there's a little more time. But I'm obviously kidding. There's not too many 40th floor elevators in Portland. But what I will say, it's often important to ask someone, where they're coming from. Because if you understand where someone's coming from, and if they're curious about Unitarian Universalism, that can be very helpful in terms of tailoring responses in relationship to who they are and what they might be looking for. But essentially, Unitarians, our Unitarian heritage, teaches us that we are all inherently worthy, that we are all met with blessing. We are not marred by original sin. We all come from the same source. We all come from the same source is one of the major thrusts of Unitarianism. Universalism teaches us that we are all headed towards the same destiny, and in fact, our fates are intertwined. And the Universalists in the past believed that everyone was going to heaven, was the way that they expressed it, because they had such a feeling about God's all-encompassing love, excluding no one. And therefore, one of the most important motivating directions of Unitarian Universalism is that we must work to protect the source or the sources of all life on earth, and we must work for the betterment of all people on this planet, for we believe that our lives depend on that. And so if you care about these things, I'd love to find out if you want to know more. So that would be an example of an elevator speech that I might give to people. And if I had like 30 seconds, I would just say, we are one faith with multiple paths to God or the truth. And that would be the shortest elevator version. That would be the shortest. Okay, well, I think that's all that I can do for right now, but I want you to know these are precious, mostly questions and comments, and it's like 3 pages of questions and comments. And so I will be thinking about these for updates, for future sermons, and thank you for sharing your questions. Yes. And I'll share, too, that this was my first question box service. The 3 other congregations I've been in, the one I grew up in and worked at, the one I interned in, and the one I was in the last 17 years before coming here, didn't do it. So this was great fun for me, speaking of learning. And let us close out in a short prayer. Spirit of life, allow us to be changed by the questions that we ask. Allow them to inform us and guide us, and allow them to allow us to find places of home, glimpses of justice, moments of realizing the beloved community. And then remind us to ask another question, for we know that we are only moving in the right direction. We haven't gotten it right quite yet. So let us continue the precious work of joining curiosity and compassion and creativity in service of this great faith, in service of collective liberation, in service of life itself. Amen. And blessed be, and may it be so.
Please rise and body your spirit for the final hymn.
And now in our going, may the light of love and freedom bless us and keep us, and be gracious unto us, and radiate down upon us and out from within us. For this is the day that you and I are given. So let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Practice questioning again and again and again. Amen and blessed be.